Hello, welcome. It is me, Danyell Carmelita, your favorite tarot reader and astrologer. Welcome to Zodiac Reads, Books Aligned with the Stars. This is where we match books with Zodiac energy. Every Zodiac sign has a vibe, a mood, an energy, and a story to tell. And I am here to help you find the perfect read for the stars of the current season. You don't have to read this as the season is happening. It could just be an energy that you're feeling. I don't believe in a coincidence, so I'm pretty sure there's something in your chart that's attracting you to this energy. And the energy that we are speaking of is the wonderful, chatty, very social, fun-driven Gemini. And let's see what stories can keep up with Gemini's fast mind and playful energy. Let's get started.
I love you.
Today in this episode, we are wrapping up Taurus energy, and we talked about Taurus season with a cozy vibe. And now we're moving on to chatty Gemini. Taurus had us snuggled up with the slow burns, focused on the billionaire status. And now Gemini wants some fast banter, clever plots, and a book that keeps us guessing. However, before we even get to Gemini, let's wrap up Taurus, shall we? So during Taurus season, I've discussed slow burn books, cozy reads, and rich billionaire books. If you want to see any of those episodes, the playlist is down below. And I want to do a wrap up. This is somewhat like a monthly wrap up if you watch regular BookTube videos. And the first book that I read for Taurus season was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. This was a very slow burn, okay? This is about an assistant who is helping a professional athlete who's from Canada. He plays football. He is, of course, the best, brooding, most athletic. Everyone loves him, athlete, and he doesn't like anyone. He doesn't care to like anyone, just a very typical romance cliche male in a book. This was the slowest burn I've ever. I mean, I've had slow burns, but at least I'm a little bit more intrigued. I already knew what's going to happen at the end. I thought there was a lot of dumb things with this book. For example, they ended up liking each other and they had no idea they liked each other. I mean, we're grown, so that doesn't make sense. And they decided to come up with a situation, and the whole time I was thinking, the situation is supposed to last for 5 years, and you're talking about not being intimate. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give too much of a spoiler alert, but that just didn't make sense to me. I rated that book, I'm pretty sure, a 1 or a 2. The next book I read was The Pumpkin Cafe. Now, I really wanted to read the last book in the series because it's not fall as I'm reading this. Of course, it's springtime. But, you know, it's a series. I said, let me be respectful and start with the first book. And I have to say that this book was 100% one of the worst books I've read. First of all, I'm not really into smut and spicy scenes if it doesn't make sense and it's irrelevant. And it was just too superficial for me. I needed a little bit more depth. I mean, I am a Scorpio moon, so I need to understand the psychology of things. And there was a lot of things in this book that didn't make sense. For example, she became an owner of the cafe and had no information on how to run a cafe, what to do. I just thought, like, who really in real life does that? Who moves to a small city and not be prepared? That's one. I'm sure there are adults who do that. I just couldn't relate. And another annoying thing was that someone was breaking into her store. She, instead of calling the police or calling someone to help her, she texts her brother who's in a whole nother city, and she really just didn't really care about someone breaking glass and breaking into her store. Because of the sex scenes, because of the things that just didn't make sense to me. There was even a character who said, I had a dream that you were doing this, and it was just an irrelevant detail in a book. I'm going to give this a 1 or a 2. I really disliked this book, okay? Also, too, I was expecting to have a little bit more cafe. I wanted to crave some pancakes or some chocolate, just some type of food, a pumpkin bread. Didn't get any of that with this book. Sorry to disappoint because I know it's very popular. I DNF the 2 books, okay? I DNF Legends and Lattes. Again, maybe if it was fall, I would be more into it, but I was trying to get into the cozy vibe. I couldn't do it. So definitely DNF that book. And this is probably because I'm coming from The Wall of Winnipeg and Me and A Pumpkin Cafe. I just didn't have time. There was another book that was a slow burn book, and it was on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know if I can find this book, but the characters went to Xavier College, and immediately the open scene was spicy and a sex scene. I was like, no, I can't do it. So quickly left that. And then I went to Jane Eyre, okay? I was really supposed to do Pride and Prejudice because I was continuing my slow burn. And when I went to Jane Eyre by accident, I was like, this is amazing. First of all, this is a slow burn. Second of all, we're dealing with the billionaire, millionaire trope, okay? We're dealing with someone who has a lot of money. I love this book. And I realized that I really like authors who are like poets. And this one really got me. The Bronte sisters, which I didn't know anything about, they have poetry books too. This made me a huge Bronte fan. And this is 100% a 5-star rating for me. One of my favorite books. I love this book so much. And I actually took my time. I didn't expect that. I know Taurus energy does move slow, but I wanted to slowly take this book in because I loved it so much. I tried to watch the movie afterwards. The book is just so much better. I felt like it's not just love, even though this is, in my opinion, a love story, but she starts off in, with a family, like a Cinderella story, and then she ends up in an orphanage, and the characters at the orphanage, they were amazing. You have the ones who, of course, you hate because it's dealing with that foster care energy. I felt like this book actually was broken down into like 3 different books. There's a part where she's at the orphanage. Then there's a part when she becomes a governess. This is when the love story happens. This is when you see all the bawling, rich energy. There's some plot twists that happen within the book. And even at the end, she becomes a whole different person. It was a whole different book and it involved family situations. So, but I love this book. I was here for it, even though it can get like a little Shakespeare-ish, like, the wordings of things could be a little complicated. There is that, however, I still loved it. 100% 5 stars. Okay, and then the last book I read for Taurus season, I actually read a lot of books, but they did not relate to Taurus. They actually related to Gemini, which is very interesting. But the last book I read for Taurus season was Tom Lake. And this was really because spring is during Taurus season and the outdoors. And Tom Lake did not disappoint for us, like discussing the beauty of natural elements and being outside, a farm or an orchid or a garden. All of that was really pretty and it was really discussed in the book. However, I find that this was more of a Cancer book. You're talking about a mom. The kids are grown. They're like in their 20s. And I think there's 3 daughters. And they come back to visit the family during quarantine, and she reminisces about the past. The rating for this book that I would give is more like a 3-star book. Wasn't my favorite. I felt like it was really slow. However, I was curious. I wanted to know the end. But I've always was very intrigued about this book. I've seen the cover so many times, and I got this book from the library. Now, Gemini season has officially entered the chat. And now we're entering a whole new vibe. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, curiosity, and sharing information. It even likes to share stories. So you're talking about our podcasters, our writers, our journalists, teachers, and students. Whether you are recording an interview, teaching a class, or investigating the truth, it really thrives on dialogue and curiosity. Gemini energy is really about asking the questions. It's also very versatile, adaptable, and there is this duality aspect. You always talk about the twins during Gemini season. It does have the 2 pillars, and it likes a lot of options. It moves easily between topics and people. It is the messenger between the underworld and the regular world. And this complexity and contradiction, because it is a flip-flopper. I don't necessarily say it's two-faced. It's not like it's pretending to be one thing and it's really the other. It really is understanding both sides because it's the messenger and it sees both sides. So it flip-flops. But Gemini energy is about new conversations, new ideas. There's discovery. It's also very young acting. There's a playful heart. There's banter. There's jokes. There's pranks. But it likes to just stay on the surface level. So it's very easy breezy kind of energy. Gemini people and Gemini energy is a very social energy. It is an air sign. And all air sign is dealing with some intellect and also socializing. It's all about words, language, storytelling. If you know someone who studies language, or if you know someone who interprets language, they most likely have strong 3rd house placements, which resonates with Gemini. They have Mercury involved in their chart, or they just have strong Gemini placements. Gemini also deals with neighborhoods, your community, and like close connections, even your siblings. Schools also represent Gemini because Gemini likes to learn. And whatever it likes to learn, it likes to share because it is the communicator. Also, Gemini likes to move fast. So if we tie all this in with books, okay, then you're talking about short stories, witty dialogue, any books that jumps between characters and timelines because it likes multiple things. It's very flexible. You know, you're talking about books that are very mysterious, but it keeps you guessing, keeps you curious, keeps you questioning. Books that teach you something new. Books that are funny and hilarious. And books that have multiple perspectives. Any book that has different point of views or even different timelines. You know, gossip is heavily involved with Gemini since it has such a strong aspect involved with it. Any books dealing with podcasters, journalists, teachers, students, schools. Gemini represents youthful energy, so like YA. And again, because I said it represents your community, then you're talking about books that are about your neighbors, your neighborhood, your community as well. So now that you know a little bit about Gemini and we just left Taurus, let me explain how you go from one to the other. Going from Taurus to Gemini is like going from a warm bath to like a bustling, busy cafe. Taurus energy, it gives us grounded, rooted things that we crave. It talks about our body, physical touch, stability, and indulgence. Gemini invites us to get up and get out and connect. You know, we left all the senses and now we want mental stimulation and letting our curiosity guide us. So you're talking about from our body senses to communicating in our mental minds. And you're talking about what feels good to what excites us, what's intriguing. And you're going from slow and steady to quick and curious. You're talking about beauty and aesthetics and feeling secure to stepping into Gemini, which values newness and discovery. Taurus says home is the sanctuary, and Gemini is like, where are my people at? Taurus likes to build, and Gemini, being a great air sign, wants to spread and share. Taurus likes to pause and enjoy, where Gemini is restless. It cannot keep still. So we're going from earthly pleasure to airy chatter, from rooted energy to being adaptable, from indulgence and luxury to exploring and connecting, from internal calmness to external engagement, from stability and security to flexibility and possibility. Taurus solidifies, it stabilizes, and it protects. Gemini is like, it's time to open up those doors, ask questions, invite people in, and it says, let's learn some more. So now that you understand the difference between Taurus and Gemini, and you even understand Gemini a little bit more, let's talk about the perfect books and the genres that go under Gemini season. Okay, so I'm going to give you book recommendations under one theme, but we are going to talk about all the themes because this is introducing us to the Gemini energy. As I continue the series, we'll be breaking down some of these themes a little bit more under Gemini, and then we'll move on when the season changes, okay? So what kind of books can you read under Gemini season? Here are some playful Gemini themes that I came up with. Anything that's dealing with banter that's very witty. So like a contemporary romance that's really funny, or like a fast-paced love story, which is the complete opposite of our slow burn that we just left. You know, if you're into mystery, this is great for you because this is a mystery that keeps you very curious. It keeps you on your feet. There's plot twists because it keeps you guessing. Any type of fast-paced mystery, books under different POVs, books that have variety and change, like it just doesn't keep still. Books about writing, journalism, and gossip, which we're going to discuss a little bit today. But any mixed media novels. So books that have like a story and then it has emails or text messages in it. If you read 50 Shades of Grey, I remember Anastasia, I think that was her name, the character, she would email or text. I forgot the guy's Christian, and you had that within the book. So any type of mixed format, so like letters, text messages, and emails. Also, fiction books are any books that have a parallel story to them. So you're talking about it's like multiple timelines or interwoven plot lines. An example of this is a book that I read. I'll put it up here because it was multiple timelines in this book, if you have read it. Also, because Gemini represents youth and it represents schools and it represents teaching, any books that you can learn from, any books that are YA, and any books that are dealing with school and teachers as a main plot or just education. The theme that I picked that we will be focusing on this episode is fiction about writers, journalists, and the power of storytelling. So the first book I have, and I have my notes down here so I can remember all the books. I'm going to mention some books that I don't have, and I was looking them up, and I might be reading these so I can do my wrap up towards the end of the season. So we have Dream Count, and this just was released January 2025. It's a 3.9 stars on Goodreads. While the main character is a travel writer and the book explores female experience, her profession plays a role through her life story. The author of this book, well, this is a Nigerian main character, and she's living in America, and she's alone in the midst of the pandemic. And this is the author's first novel back after 10 years. I've seen this cover several times, so I'm really interested in this. I most likely will be reading this book, I have to be honest. So another book I have here is called The Plot. And this is a book series, but it is rated a 3.8, a suspenseful story about a struggling writer who steals a student's idea. And the consequences of that decision is within the storyline. That sounds very intriguing. However, I don't want to read a series, but you never know. The next book I have here is The Paris Bookseller, and this is a dramatic story of how a humble bookseller fought against incredible odds to bring one of the most important books to the public. It's a fictionary account of Sylvia Beach in the Shakespeare and Company bookstore. Maybe. That one doesn't really intrigue me, but yeah. Okay. The next one, which I talked about in the last video, is The Devil Wears Prada. I've seen the movie. I didn't know it was really a book until last time I looked this up. And of course, it's about the magazine world and journalists and writing and an editor. Also fashion. Also, too, I think this is a funny book. So there's humor. Another one I have is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This is a 4-star book, blindsided by her mother's sudden death and falls for 2 different men at the same time. Very Gemini energy. Her world fractures even more. She works on a novel she's been writing for 6 years, a story about an aspiring novelist balancing grief, passion, and the messy search for identity. That one really intrigues me. The next one we have is The 13th Tale by Danyell. I've seen this several times, okay? This is a 3.9 star rating on Goodreads. Follows Margaret Lee, a young biographer who is contacted by a reclusive author, Vida Winter, to write her life story. This is giving just giving something that is very similar to the books that are currently out. But also, too, there is a gothic mystery about this and about the biographer who unravels the secrets of the famous but elusive author. This is definitely a storyline that I've just recently read about. I'll talk about the book in a minute, but we've heard it, but actually this is more gothic. Now, this book I read, this is Divine Rivals. I thought I actually owned the physical book. I read this on my Kindle. I really like this. This is about a protagonist and journalist. They're writers, kind of competitive, enemies to lovers kind of trope, but they're writers for a magazine, for a newspaper. Also, there's magic with a magical typewriter, and they kind of like write each other through this typewriter, but they're journalists, and it's during war. Now, this is a book series, but I'm not mad at it because I really enjoyed this book. I have not read the second book. The second book is called Ruthless Vows. I did rate this book a 5-star read, okay? And I'm not into fantasy and all that stuff, but I really, really like this book. It does deal with grief if you're not into grief. I think it was well written. I really like the way the author wrote this book. I'm intrigued, and I'm surprised I have not finished this series, and most likely I'll finish the next book during this season. Another book that I've already read, and I've read this one on my Kindle, is called Beach Read by Emily Henry. I read this book because everyone talks about Emily Henry, and of course, I'm nosy, okay? I have a Mars in Gemini and have a Venus in Gemini, so a lot of curiosity killed the cat for me. And this is about 2 characters who are writers. They have a writer's block. They're actually neighbors as well, so it's giving very Gemini energy. There's even a book club involved with this. This is also very Gemini, and it's all about the creative process of writing. Yeah, I really like this book. Actually, it was a very easy read, and I find that it's called Beach Read, and I think this is something you could read at a beach or on vacation, but it's like an enemies to lover kind of book. What would I rate this book? Probably like a 3. It's not my favorite, but it is very easy to read. Now, I do want to read this, Book Lovers by Emily Henry. A lot of people say that this is a really great book, and it's about Nora Steffens. One of the 2 main characters is a high-powered literary agent. While not a writer herself, her entire professional life revolves around working with authors, shaping stories, and understanding the publishing industry. The novel delves into book editing, the relationship between agent and authors. It's a romance, and it's a journey to self-discovery. Most likely, I'll be reading that book. Another book that I have read is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Love this book, 5-star rating. It is about an author who has a best friend. The best friend passed away, and this author just basically takes over, finds her writing in her house, and pretends that she has wrote this book. It goes on. I'm pretty sure I did not give you the spoiler alert, but there's a whole story behind the process as she becomes famous, and all the process of her stealing this dead author's book, who was her friend, best friend. Great writing. Love the style of the writing. It's something different. I've actually never read anything like this plot line, so I enjoyed it. So it's about Asian culture too, and that's something I'm not that familiar with. Love this book. 100% 5 stars. Another book that is a 5-star read for me is Fahrenheit 451. This one is also about book writing. However, it's different. Okay, so this is the destruction of books. This is also a classic book. Destruction of books and writing knowledge. All of that is within this book. The lead character is a fireman, but he's not the fireman what we're used to. This is a person who his job is to burn books, and he starts to meet these people who are very intriguing, and they actually love books, which is very foreign to him because the masses are taught to not read. Love this book. Like, people even have to memorize books because of, they're, people's job is to burn books. And so other people's job is to secretly memorize a book from front page to the end. And they also memorize the Bible. I do want to say that this is giving very much like the new issue with Kindle. If you don't know, it's like you own a book, but you don't really own it. You just get the digital copy, and they can take it and change it and do as they please, which reminds me of another book, 1984. And this is about absolute control over information and history and language. The main character, his job is to re-edit books, re-edit words, change the definition of words. This is all, they're both giving very Gemini energy. I love them. And this character also had a secret diary too, so he can remember things. It just shows you from those 2 books how important literature is, how important reading is to our mind and to our world and to our culture and to the future. From reading those 2 books, and I don't think I read them back to back, but from reading those 2 books, I really was like, oh my gosh, I need to own all my books. Another book that I actually read that I loved is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. You guys, when I read this book, I was like, this is the best book in the world. I mean, I really loved book 1, but I read book 2 and 3. I read them back to back. Loved it. It's a crime thriller featuring a disgraced financial journalist who teams up with a hacker to solve decades of old mystery. It's really a journalist. He does own a newspaper company, or he works for his wife, or his ex-wife owns a news company. But yeah, there is writing involved and being a writer in it. I loved this book, okay? It's one of my top most recommended reads. Another book I have not read, actually, I have these books here. I wasn't even showing. Here's a book, 1984, that I quickly purchased, and I thought I owned Fahrenheit 451. I cannot believe I do not own the physical copy. So I will get that book. Here is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The book that I've actually read was a short, fat copy, and it was so bent up. But I have this on my bookshelf just in case any of my kids want to read it. But I used to own all 3 books, and I give away my books, and now I don't want to. So, especially the ones that I really love. Okay, so the next book we have is Misery by Stephen King, a suspenseful thriller about a famous author held captive by his #1 fan. I have not read this book. I'm definitely going to read this book, okay? I know this is giving cold winter, but I like change. I like variety. So yeah, I'm most likely going to read this book. Another book I have on my Kindle is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I actually DNF'd this book and I want to finish it. I repurchased it during Aries season. So it's a dark psychological thriller about a Chicago journalist who returns to her hometown to report on a series of murders. So it's giving dark. I know it's like, what is going on, Danyell? This sounds like very winter books, but you know, I'm here for it. I'm intrigued. Another book that I purchased and have not read, The Dead Romantics. I've actually read another book, I thought by this author. What is another book that they wrote? I thought I read another book by this author. Anyway, but this one is the main character, Florence Day, is a ghostwriter for a highly successful romance novelist. Her entire career revolves around crafting love stories for someone else. There's writer block involved with this, and also grief as well. So looks like a very light read. Another book we have, and I really love the cover, that's why I purchased this book, Harlem Rhapsody by Victoria Christopher, an extraordinary story of Jessie Fawcett, a real-life pivotal figure in the Harlem Renaissance. Fawcett was a literary editor, novelist, and poet, and the book centers around her life and her career. It's involving journalism, publishing, the publishing world. Also, she helped a lot of Black writers like County Colin, Langston Hughes, Neela Larson, and published their books in the crisis. I think there's also like a library element added to this book too. The book I mentioned earlier, The 13th Tale, definitely was giving this book here. This is a very popular book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins here, and it's about a young journalist, and she interviews a reclusive movie star, uncovering decades of secrets and rewriting her own sense of truth. This is a 5-star reading for me. I thought it was good. It's something I actually never read a book like this. If you read the 13 Tales or whatever that book I mentioned earlier, that's kind of giving the same energy. But I haven't read that book, but this one was really good. Now, this book I just finished actually during Taurus season, and it's called A Great Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. It's the same premise as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Actually, there is a little twist to it because there is a competition involved in it, and there is a love interest involved. The book revolves around 2 writers who are both competing for a chance to write for the biography of this heiress, Margaret Ives. It's a competition. There is a romance element. This book, I'm telling you, well, we'll get into this a little bit later, but when I do a wrap up, I got my thoughts on this book. I'll just keep them to myself for now. Another book that I read on my Kindle is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I think this is on Kindle Unlimited currently. And this is not really about writing, but the authors are both writers, okay? And 2, you have one of their friends being a publisher, and they're having parties, and they're having award ceremonies, all involved. They're writing. Even the topics of their books are heavily involved with their personal life. Eva writes best-selling erotica. Shane is a reclusive, award-winning literary novelist. Their careers and their relationship to writing are central to their identities and to the plot. It is very spicy in this book, okay? Now, this is a book I DNF, and it was because I was busy in my life, and I'm going to finish this. This actually I bought for my daughter, and it's called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. And it's about, it's a YA book, and this girl is in school, and she's doing a school project, and she's digging into old police reports and interviews people and cross-references information, and she's uncovering clues about a death that happened in the community. It is about the community. She is investigating. She is researching. And and she's writing this project here. And she's dealing with the person who died sibling. So there's a lot of Gemini aspects within this book. And and it was an easy read from what I finished. From what I read. I even still have the bookmark still in place. I finished at page 144. But I remember really liking this book, but I don't know what happened. Sometimes there's things in life like book club, or like I go on a trip, and then I get distracted very easily. But I definitely want to finish that book. Also, too, I want to give some honorable mentions real quick. If I can put this in every video, I would. Chaos by Tom O'Neill. This is an amazing book. It's giving a little bit more Scorpio energy and Pisces energy. But, you know, he is a journalist, okay? And he talks about his writing process throughout the book. And he also talks about his publisher and dealing with them. So it is giving Gemini energy as well. But Chaos, 100% 6-star read, okay? You have to annotate because it gets deep. Just a book off of education. This is called Educated, a memoir. This is an excellent book. This is 100% a 5-star read. And it is about education. It's not just about the fact that she's educated. It really gets deep about, I think they're Mormons, and he closes off the family. You're dealing with mental health issues and how it affects the family. Yeah, but very highly naturally educated too. I think there is sexual abuse and physical abuse involved in this book, but it's really well written. I love this book. 5 stars for sure, but it's entitled Educated. And towards the middle and the end, if I remember correctly, because I read this probably some years ago, there is some involvement with education, which is dealing with Gemini energy. Another honorable mention is Good Material. And the reason why I picked this book, because when I was reading it in the library, it says here, Andy, okay, in the sharply funny, first of all, an exquisitely relatable account of a romantic disaster and friendship, Dolly Alderton offers up a love story with 2 endings, okay? Demonstrating once again why she is one of the most exciting writers today and a true voice of the generation. 2 different endings. If that is not giving Gemini energy, then I don't know what. Yeah, so I'm excited to read this book, and I got it from my local library. Now, this book I wanted to read last season because I just was going to use it for my cozy read. This is the same author of Yellowface, R.F. Kwan, and it's called Babel. And the reason why this is giving Gemini energy, because Gemini is about communication, and there is a language dealing with this book. Also education. I think it's for a school background here. Yeah, there were some other elements that reminded me of Gemini, but because I love the author so much and I love her writing style, yeah, I'm most likely going to read this book next. But you guys, so far, all the books that I mentioned, probably except for like 2 or 3, I want to read. I want to read all of them. That shows that my Mars and Venus in Gemini is so strong. I'm so excited for Gemini season. That's the vibe that we have from moving to Taurus to Gemini, from cozy luxury to curious conversations. Gemini is not just making us think, but even communicate. And I'm excited because in this episode, we had our great books featuring book writers, journalists, and just the power of writing your own story, or the power of writing stories, and the power of books. Now, if you want to go deeper on astrology and you want to read a book on it, I've written an ebook on how to read your own natal chart, because the power is in your hands. Ebook is really affordable, and it gives you step-by-step on how to read your own natal chart. And in there, I break down the basics of astrology, which is giving the very beginning learning and education, which is very Gemini energy on astrology. But it's not too beginning, because if you know just a little bit, you really will love this ebook. So the link for the ebook will be down below. And let me know what you're reading for Gemini season. Let me know, are you going to read any of the books that I mentioned before? Any of the books that I haven't read? Let me know if you think they're 5-star reads, or what your opinion is about that book. And if you have any recommendations that capture that Gemini energy, please put them down below and we can chat about it. And until then, I will see you in the next episode of Zodiac Reads, Books Aligned with the Stars. Bye.
Bye bye.